The fucking title. That is hilarious. I made that shit up when I was on the shitter. Subscribe to the channel if you got a good laugh, you guys. People are gonna get a good laugh at it. Out of it too.
And it
Uh,
will be
Whatever will
joined
be, will
and
be.
married
Baby, baby, hold
to
on to
these
me.
things.
Baby.
Not just one. There's a lot of them. Because there's more than one star in the heaven. Now think about what I just said.
Just
If we were
said.
to now think about what I just said. If we were to reverse this, let's say that this represents um, the the concept of Christianity, in that God is bringing together a bride for His Son. To me, that's the goal. That's the aim of everything that God does, and everything that's recorded for us in our Bible. God is searching for a woman to be His Son's bride. Because remember what He said about Adam. Adam is Christ. It is not good that the man should be alone. I will make an help meet for him. And that, to me, stands out as the sum of the purpose of God, of all the ages past, right now, and any age left in the future. God is one person by one person building up the house of God, the body of Christ, that Christ Himself will marry and join with, and the two will be one flesh. Okay? So this would be us here on the earth, and instead of all these multiple stars, we would make this the sun, because Christ is the Son of righteousness, and so on. He's the bride. Oh, Psalm 19. Yes, Psalm
Okay.
19.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Lord,
Lord, for
for
reminding
reminding me
me of
of that.
that. Because that's like a perfect illustration. Psalm 19 describes what the Son is. Their line is gone out through all the earth, and their words to the end of the world. In them hath He set a tabernacle for the Son, which is as a bridegroom coming out of his chamber. Isn't that something? That Christ is the Son, is the bridegroom. So let's say instead of stars here, we would put a sun here. And so this then would be why the two pillars are there on the front of Solomon's temple's porch. Jachin, strength, Boaz, beauty. And you're joined together to make one body. Because when they showed Jesus the temple, and they said, "Isn't this beautiful?"
Mmm.
Jesus said, "Destroy this
Oh,
temple, and in
fuck.
3 days I'll rebuild it." You can't say it's 46 years we were building this. Jesus said, "I know. I'm the one that made it that way. I'm the one that made it take that long." No, I'm talking about the temple of my what? Body. Okay? In 3 days I'll rebuild it. Thank you, Lord. But now back to the masonry side of this. Um, and the reason why, when I went into the house of the Temple Lodge, and I noticed that there were two spiral staircases going up. In Solomon's Temple, I think there's only one. But in the house of the Temple Lodge, you go up the staircase and you're on this platform, and then from that point, two staircases spiral up. Not just one, there's two. So on one side is Jachin, and it has 23 steps. On the other side is Boaz, and it has 23 steps. And you find out that Albert Pike, who wrote Morals and Dogma, get this now, his dead body is buried in that house of the Temple Lodge, standing straight up to represent, I don't know exactly which one he's representing, whether it's Jachin or Boaz, but there were two men who, I don't know what the other guy's name is, you'll have to look it up to see what kind of, whatever he brought to Freemasonry, but both of those men stand as the eternal pillars of Jachin and Boaz. That's, and I think I get this, of Jachin and Boaz. That's, and stand as the eternal pillars of Jachin and Boaz. That's, and I think I get this, because while our transformation and our marriage, so to speak, is with Jesus, who is alive forevermore, both Jachin and Boaz in the house of the Temple Lodge is dead. Perpetually dead. Forever dead. Second death dead. If you get what I'm saying there. So anyway, oh, praise the Lord. Now, yeah, let me do this. We're going to talk about several people sent me some news out of Las Vegas concerning another UFO sighting. So consider this while I'm on this subject, and we'll move on to those. So this would be humanity here, planet Earth, and all of these stars. Stars are angels. But just because telescopes and scientific instruments and
hell
all
yes.
those things say, it's just a great big ball of gas and nuclear fission going on, and that's all it is. Just because they say that doesn't mean they are true. Let God
They
be
are.
true and every man a liar.
He is so twisted
And
in
I
his scripture.
think that if you would just entertain the notion, let's say for a few months, let's just say for a few months that you decided, you know what, I'm gonna kind of forget what the scientists say about all the stars in the universe and what they're made of, and what kind of classification they have, and what kind of chemicals are burning inside of them, and so on. I'm going to forget about all of that, and I'm just going to tell myself that stars are angels, and just entertain that thought for a couple months. And if you don't like it, and nothing ever makes sense to you ever from that point forward, especially when you read the Bible, just do what you want with it. But play along with me just for a minute, okay? Or a couple months. So, these two pillars represent a joining together. A hieros gamos. A sacred marriage. Whereby these stars, and actually in a lot of these globes, you'll see the constellations. There's even a tarot card called the High Priestess. Let's see if I can get a big one. There we go. Notice that she is empowered by Jachin and Boaz. Notice Jachin is white, Boaz is black. It's the joining of opposites together. All right? But let's go back here now. So let's say in this marriage, whereas in Christianity, this would represent Christ, the Son, joining with all of those who are born again, past, present, future. But in this case, it's the evil stars. 1/3 of the angelic realm, which in itself is an innumerable amount. If the overall count of stars is innumerable, then 1/3 of them is just as innumerable as the overall is. So these stars now, they're going to do exactly what they did in Genesis 6. Exactly. Because stars have DNA. You believe that? Well, let me ask this question. Does God have DNA? Does God have DNA?
No. Ugh.
Okay, that's a big question, isn't it?
Not really. Not
If
hard.
I said to you,
Now you get the flip over.
or let's say you said to me, he does, then I would. How then are we born? How are we born again? And from that point, you're going to have to make a decision in your own mind or try to convince me that being born again is simply another metaphor. That it doesn't actually mean being born of a woman coming out of her bowel. Born of a woman. It doesn't actually mean that. And that God is our Father in a symbolic nature. You would have to convince me of that. Because when I see 1 Peter chapter 1, verse 23, being born again, not of corruptible seed, but of incorruptible, and we know what seed is. We know it now. For the past 70 years, we've pretty much known what DNA is and how it works. So now we live in an age where we can't get out of it. We cannot get out of this conclusion. We cannot get out of this conclusion where Jesus taught in the parable, the good seed is the word of God, and some of it fell by the wayside, was devoured. Some of it fell upon stony ground, some upon thorny ground, some fell upon good ground, and it brought forth some 30, some 60, some 100-fold. And it's seed, and we know what everything in the world that is referred to as seed, we know what it is. It's DNA. So either God has DNA, literally causing us in our second birth to be sons of God, or God doesn't literally have DNA, and this subject of us being sons of God is simply make believe. And I don't believe that. You couldn't pay me enough money. So, what about lesser spirits? Did they have seed? Well, here's a question. Does Satan have DNA? Well, now, when God was dealing with Eve and Adam and the serpent, and he said to the serpent, because thou hast done this, thou art cursed above all cattle and above every beast of the field. Upon thy belly shalt thou go, and dust shalt thou eat all the days of thy life. And I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed. And you'll say,
I gotta either
well,
find a village or...
you know, when it says his seed, you know, that's a... Say it. That's spirituals. That's like metaphorical.
No, it's physical seed. Sperm is
Why
seed.
is it metaphorical when in the same sentence, God doesn't even have to take a breath to say this? I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed. He doesn't have to go, and between thy seed and her seed. He doesn't put a pause in there. It's the same thing. If the woman has seed, and she does, as a matter of fact, not only does a woman in the conception process contribute 23 of her own chromosomes in each egg that is formed, every human being carries a unique identifier in every cell containing DNA that links them directly to their mother. There is absolutely no mistaking whatsoever who a person's mother is. And it's called mitochondrial DNA. Mitochondrial DNA is just a group, a small cluster of DNA, of chromosomes, that govern the processes of the cell, that tells each part of the cell what to do with itself, how to do it, how often to do it, when to stop doing it, and so on and so on. And mitochondrial DNA, you know it for a fact, only comes from that person's mother. Only. So there's no way that any person on the earth could ever be mistaken who his mother is. That if you just sample the mitochondrial DNA and match that up with whatever woman you think is your mother, if there's a match, that woman's your mother, and there is no doubt about it. If she's not your mother, it'll show up in that mitochondrial DNA test. I just love this stuff. So when the Bible says her seed, oh, it's as literal as all get out.
He's annoying on this next one.
It's as literal as politicians are corrupt.
You didn't have to say that, idiot. Oh,
okay?
That's annoying. Just had to talk shit to somebody. That's Christ-like.
Why can't the serpent seed be literal too?
It is. It's a physical freaking sperm.
So, why can't the serpent seed be literal too? Well, as a matter of fact, it is. So, and I'm just running this. I know some of you have heard this, but I'm just running through this, just for somebody that I don't know, maybe you've never heard this before, and it's interesting you, or maybe you're out there and you want a piece of me. And well, stand in line. It's a pretty long line, so just wait, all right?
Oh, fuck yeah.
Look at this. Look at this. Man became a living soul. Imagine that. When Paul's describing the resurrection, God giveth it a body as it pleased him, and to every seed his own body. And that's rule number one. Rule number one. By the way, I got a new cup. Looks exactly like the old cup without the dents. Okay? I still have the old cup. And I'm going to take it like camp coming up and places where if it gets banged up and stuff like that, I won't care. This is brand new. But anyway, God
Technically
giveth to the
based on.
body as it pleased him, and to every seed his own body. So rule number one, if it has a body, a living body, then it has seed. To every seed his own body. That's rule number one. All flesh is not the same flesh. There is one kind of flesh of men, another flesh of beasts, another of fishes, and another of birds. There are also
What the fuck I'm
celestial
doing,
what?
dumbass.
Well, spirits don't have a body. That's in the Bible. Really, where? Where is that?
You would have to study it.
Where is it in the Bible that spirits do not have a discernible form about them? Where is that written? We have been watching way too much Casper the Friendly Ghost cartoons and ghost movies where we see, see-through foggy apparitions of someone, and that's the mindset now of 20th and 21st century. It's beyond Christianity, but that's what everybody thinks a ghost is. It's just a mist of air, and it has no form. Or here's my favorite. Well, they choose to appear in this form. What verse is that? When Abraham was met by the three men, we know that one of them was the Lord. The other two, we know that they were angels, because in Genesis 18, it constantly refers to them as men. And in Genesis 19, they're always called angels. But they're the same guys. So these two men, angels, they sat down at Abraham's house. Abraham fed them veal. They killed a calf, a young calf, and dressed it. That means they cooked it with veggies and spices and all kinds of good stuff. And I bet that was goody. And they drank, and they ate, and they got their feet washed. How do you wash a ghost's feet if it's just pass-through stuff? For everyone looking at them and touching them and feeding them and everything else, these men were men. And then when they get to Sodom, well, you know the rest of the story on that. I'll tell you that. Those guys were good. Okay? And the men of Sodom said, fresh meat, boys. And here again, they go to Lot's house, they get their feet washed, they eat. Everything about them appears as a normal. The Apostle Paul himself told us to be careful to entertain strangers, for we could be entertaining angels. How?
Unaware.
Unaware. That means they could appear as men so good we would not know that they were angels. So, celestial bodies, remember the rule on bodies? To every seed is own body. Celestial bodies, bodies terrestrial. So, bodies terrestrial. Oh, you can't see that. Now you can see it. We do that again. Celestial bodies, bodies terrestrial. To every seed his own body. Celestial bodies have seed. The seed of the serpent, the seed of the woman. So now, the seed of the woman the seed of the sons of God joined together, which is what this symbol means, and this symbol means, and oh, you got a book here, don't you? Isn't that something? This symbol means, and look at the pyramid. The pyramid has 1, 2, 3, 4 sides on it, and it represents, and it's made out of brick, which is clay, which is us. But there is this other entity. It is ether. And ether simply means from space. And they are joined together. Man. Square and compass. Albert Pike said that the square takes on the shape of a female and represents...
No, get the fuck over there, god damn you.
The plane
Idiot.
of the earth. The compass represents...
Let's fucking kill these
the
idiots in their
male,
goddamn
the
offices,
shape of a
faggots.
male. And it represents the circle of the sky. We see the half circle of it at night and the half circle of it at day. And so the compass draws that out. So that represents the heavens. And notice that they are united together to form the letter G. I'm pretty sure there's got to be a Sesame Street episode and an electric company episode that probably deals close with this. I don't know. I'm just guessing here. But anyway, that's what all of this means. Okay, look at this one. This is the two sphinxes that are out in front of the Masonic House of the Temple Lodge. This sphinx has its eyes open. This one has its eyes closed. What does that mean? It's seeing blind. It's an opposite. They're polar opposites to each other. One can see, one cannot see. And just anything like that. Now, let's get to what I really wanted to talk about today. And you know, I've got some show a video if I can. Yeah, let me do this one.
Oh no, some of the
Now, for YouTube, this is
the thing.
I'm not claiming any copyright notice on this. This is fair use. I'm using it to give commentary and or educational enlightenment about it. And if you look on the screen here, you'll see George Knapp. George Knapp is the premier journalist dealing with UFOs in the United States. And this guy, this is who Bob Lazar went to. George Knapp has investigated probably thousands of UFO stories. He wrote part of the book on the Skinwalker Ranch. It's everything. But this story came out 15 hours ago, yesterday, last night. Las Vegas family claims to see aliens after several report something falling from the sky.
It is a police call everybody will be talking about. Thanks for joining us here at 6 o'clock. I'm Denise Valdez.
I'm Brian Loftus. The family says something crashed into their backyard, prompting them to call 911, saying they saw creatures walking around.
8 News Now investigators digging into this for weeks now. And tonight, our David Charnes with the video you will only see on 8 News Now. David?
Right,
Denny, sources telling the News Now investigators that several agencies believe something landed or crashed. Whether it was non-humans or not, it certainly scared the people living on this property. Now, before we show you that video, listen to their call for help.
There's like an 8-foot person beside it, and another one's inside, and it has big eyes and looking at us, and it's still there.
Okay, where is this on your property?
In my backyard. And I swear to God, this is not a joke. This is actually, we terrified of it.
So there's 2 people or 2 subjects that are in your backyard?
Correct, and they're very large. They're like 8 foot, 9 feet, 10 foot. I don't know. They look like aliens to us. Big eyes. They have big eyes, like I can't explain it. And big mouth. They're shiny eyes, and they're not human. They're 100% they're not human.
Well, the 8 News Now investigators obtaining video as officers then responded to the call you just heard. You'll see the officers also saw something in the sky that night, but the big question is, what was it, and is it all connected? It's almost midnight on May 1st when a Las Vegas Metro Police officer's body cam catches this, something flashing low in the sky.
911 emergency.
Minutes later,
There's like an 8-foot person beside it, and another one inside, and it has big eyes and looking at us.
someone called
Why can't I get that
2
lucky?
large figures in their backyard.
Oh, I'm so nervous right now.
The 8 News Now investigators obtaining another officer's video as he's sent to the Northwest Valley home.
I have butterflies, bro. I've only thought of shooting stars, and these people say there's aliens in their backyard.
By now, it's more than an hour after that bright light. Officers meeting up with the caller and his family.
What'd you see?
It was like a big creature.
A big creature?
Yeah, like around 10 feet tall.
I'm not going to BS you guys. One of my partners said they saw something fall in the sky too, so that's why I'm kind of curious. Did you see anything land in your backyard? Or?
They see like a big, that's what they say. They see like a big something with light.
What I saw right now, I do believe in it.
Police walk into the backyard to investigate, but Metro blacked out that part of the video because it's considered private property. What's clear? They're taking this call seriously.
Hey, this might sound like a really dumb question, but did you guys see anything fall out of the sky?
Asking others what they saw.
I would normally discount it as nothing. However, seeing as one of my partners said they saw it too, only reason I'm actually investigating it further.
That investigation turning up no concrete answers as of Wednesday. Whatever or whoever fell into that yard, long gone within minutes.
Oh, hey, if those 9-foot beings come back, don't call us, all right? Deal with it yourself. I ain't dealing with that.
That's hilarious.
This is quite weird, Brian was saying as we're watching this story. Now, we've been in contact with the family in that video, and as you heard in that 911 call, they seem very reasonable and honestly quite scared as you heard them in the call. No, they don't seem impaired in any way. And whatever crashed by the time that police got there was gone, but sources say that there's really no dispute. Something was in their yard. Exactly what? We do not know.
I mean, it's so interesting. So, like, the Metro officers see something, the neighbors see something. I mean, so what could it be?
Well, we know that there are obviously a lot of military bases around this area. George Knapp covers a lot of that stuff for us on the 80s Now Investigators. We're showing you drone video from above that area. And we know, of course, Creech not far away, Nellis Air Force Base not far. I checked in with them. They say they are not involved at all, and we are waiting to hear from the Pentagon as well.
And you talk to these people, it seemed completely legitimate to you, and do you have any personal thoughts on maybe what it was?
Right, so it seems from talking to our sources that something happened. There was obviously some flash in the sky. A lot of people saw it that night on the night of April 30th, early in the morning on May 1st. Did that exact thing land in their yard? I don't know. But these people said they saw some SUV circling the area. Could this have been some piece of equipment that malfunctioned? Maybe they saw something and then someone came. I can't believe we're talking about this. Someone came and retrieved it from the backyard in the SUV. We don't know. This all comes as a former high-level intelligence officer, a veteran, was on News Nation talking about how there is a program where the government collects some unidentified objects. So this might be that. We just don't know. We're going to work to find out, though.
And no substances. They were looking with clear eyes.
Very interesting.
Not big buggy eyes, though.
This is really unique. Thank you, David.
All right, now let me show you. Let's see here. Let me put this up on the screen for ye. This is from April of this year, April 27th. UFO programs retrieving and analyzing crash material have come forward to spill their secrets to senior members of Congress. Now, we just saw, this story that you just saw, the video, this happened last night. You saw and heard the 911 call, and I'm sure that around the country, these 911 call centers get some of the dumbest calls in the world. Yeah, I got a Bigfoot
Hold on,
out here
guys.
in my backyard. I got him.
I'll be right back. Give me a second. Arg. Give me a second. Okay.
Tied up. Yeah, me and my friends was out here drinking. We've been drinking probably 6 hours. And this thing come up. I'm sure they get that stuff all the time. But then you have the corroboration of at exactly that same time, a policeman on patrol in that area is talking to someone, and his body cam captures this thing going down. That's coincidental, but I don't believe it's accidental. I think they are correlated with each other. I think the officer saw, and his body cam. Thank God for body cams now. His body cam captured this thing falling down from the sky, and then shortly after that, you have the 911 call of the family reporting, hey, this thing fell out of the sky into our backyard, and there's two great big tall alien-looking things with big eyes and huge mouths, and we are freaking out. Send somebody out here now. And I think at the end of that story, didn't they say that law enforcement had been out or something like that to retrieve it? Or not law enforcement, but somebody came out to retrieve whatever there was left over in the backyard. Here you have Daniel Sheehan. Now, Daniel Sheehan is an interesting guy for me. He is on my radar from several different perspectives. Number one, he is a Supreme Court lawyer, meaning that he is authorized to argue cases before the Supreme Court. Not every lawyer can do that, and he has already done that. He was, I think, Sheehan was part of the Watergate thing back in the early 70s with Nixon. Sheehan also argued before the Supreme Court on journalists' absolute rights to protect their sources, because apparently a law enforcement agency was trying to get after some reporters, demanding that they turn over their sources. The reporters didn't want to do it, and so the cops threw them in jail, for hindering prosecution or whatever, and it went to the Supreme Court, and Sheehan effectively argued the case that these journalists have a right to protect their sources, and they don't have to reveal them in most cases to any law enforcement, and they won that case. So that's part of it. In other words, he's a very intelligent man, very well-spoken man, very analytical man. Not somebody given to wild speculation.
Idiot, get over
Number
there.
two, he is a Roman Catholic, very devout, dedicated Roman Catholic, and at one time he was attending Jesuit training school. He was going to be a Jesuit priest, but I don't know exactly what happened, but he got married, so you can't be a Jesuit. But anyway, however, he still has very high connections with the Jesuit order. That is what makes me also interested in him. As part of his connections with the Jesuit order, and the fact that he has done legal work for the Vatican, for the Jesuit order, they knew what he wanted. They allowed him to go into the Vatican archives and look for any kind of documents, books, or anything like that relating to UFOs. He was not allowed to take in any photograph material. He was allowed to take in a little notepad and a pencil to make notes, but he couldn't take the notes with him. He had to leave the notes
Bottom left
there.
of the map would start
But what
unfogging.
he did was he found, I don't know what book he found, but he found an actual photograph that the Vatican has of a UFO, and a very detailed one at that. And he was able to sketch that not on the paper of the notepad that he had. I don't remember how he did it. He may have turned it over and sketched it on the back of the back page of it. And so when they said, you know, let us see the notepad, and they flipped through it, didn't see anything.
Oh,
Okay,
so
here you
cool.
go. And he is a big believer in UFOs. He may have had encounters. I don't know. Number 3, he is the lawyer that the guy that,
So cool.
that led the
Stephen Greer, I think.
Disclosure Project.
Yeah, Stephen Greer.
And brought out all of these NASA, ex-military, government contractor men that had stories that they were swearing they would testify before Congress. This is what we saw, this is what we heard, this is what we experienced, so on and so on. They would swear an oath and testify to Congress under penalty of prison that we're telling the truth. And Daniel Sheehan was the attorney that promised these guys that if the government tried to go after them for violating their national secrets oath or their security oath, that Sheehan would defend them because this UFO thing is not covered under that, because the programs that the government runs to investigate UFOs are all off the books and supposedly don't even exist. And so Sheehan says, if they try to take away your pension or whatever, I guarantee you I can get you off of those charges. I guarantee it. So that's how they all came forward. So here's what Sheehan said. Lawyer Daniel Sheehan said he's in contact with at least 6 former government officials or military contractors who say they worked on UFO programs. The whistleblowers claim they worked on Roswell's UFO crash retrieval and reverse engineering programs and have spoken to members of Congress. The attorney is launching a watchdog charity for greater government transparency on UFOs. Now, here's another story. Pentagon UFO chief says UFO mothership possibly in our solar system. Sean Kirkpatrick, director of the Pentagon's All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, wrote in a research report that an interstellar object could potentially be a parent craft that releases many small probes during its passage of the Earth on operational construct, an operational construct not too dissimilar from NASA missions, according to the Military Times. Now, there is another problem that, while I have time, I want to show you. Let me see if I can find it. It would be, yeah, here we go. Let me get rid of this, and let's see here. This one. Here we go.
Yesterday, for example, a former Air Force officer who worked for years in military intelligence came forward as a whistleblower to reveal the U.S. government has physical evidence of crashed non-human-made aircraft, as well as the bodies of the pilots who flew those aircraft. The Pentagon has spent decades studying these otherworldly planes in order to build more technologically advanced weapons systems. Okay, that's what the former intel officer revealed, and it was clear he was telling the truth.
In other words, UFOs are actually real, and apparently so is extraterrestrial life. As we know,
I'm gonna beat you, idiots.
in a
You shut
normal
up.
country, this news would qualify as a bombshell, story of the millennium. But in our country, it doesn't. The whistleblower's account ran on a technology website called the Debrief, probably before. The Washington Post had that story, but decided not to run it. The New York Times, meanwhile, just pretended it never happened. On the front page of the New York Times website this morning, there were 5 stories about Ukraine, as well as 4 stories apiece about Donald Trump, trans people, and climate change, as you will learn. There was nothing at all about how an alien species is flying hypersonic aircraft over our lands. Not one word. All right. So, excuse me. Let's bring some Bible into this. Why is it now that all of a sudden we have story after story after story? Not from the general public, not from some, very, very doubtful alleged eyewitness. There were some books that came out in the 50s, after the late 40s, early 50s UFO flap, where people said that they had met aliens from the planet Venus, and they had some from the planet Mercury, and a lot of that stuff just seemed hokey. And it just, when you go back and look at it, it's almost like, well, no wonder nobody believes in them. If they read stuff like this, they would go, okay, you people are nuts. Which may have been the plan all along. It may have been the idea that we got to make anybody who says they saw a UFO, we got to make them look crazy. And so now we are still dealing with that. I deal with it. Okay, I'll be honest with you. I get. It does bother me when I would like to go to a church and put on a one-night seminar and discussion on the subject of UFOs. But in most cases, nobody wants that. And what one night at a church, I did this, and I've sort of when I get up and give presentations like that, or things on devils and haunted houses and so on, I say, okay, this is not necessarily preaching. This is an intelligence update. Okay, you're getting an intelligence briefing from me. This is what I believe is going on in the world. But I did that at a man's church one night, and I got done. I come down off the stage, and I said, I really don't know, how in the world I could ever have an altar call after a talk on UFOs. Well, lo and behold, a young lady came down to the altar without anybody saying anything. And she was just bawling her eyes out. And what it was, she was giving her life back over to the Lord, sort of a rededication. And come to find out, she had some experiences, not necessarily with UFOs, but some very, very paranormal, supernatural experiences. And I just kind of had the thought that God was using the things that I was saying to bring whatever had happened to this young lady to mind, and God then used that to say, you need to pick a side. And I guarantee you, the other side you won't like. You won't like being on their team. And so I was very taken aback by that. I was blessed by it. I really was. But I'm sure that there are people out there that think I'm absolutely nuts. I've seen some of the comments that people write on YouTube, and I know what some of you think. And for me to say that it just rolls off my back like water off a duck's back, I don't really care what you think of me. To say that would be wrong. I would like for everybody to take this subject seriously, simply because this, in my opinion, is about as real as it gets in fulfilling major portions of Bible prophecy. Now, let me say that again. I believe that all of the paranormal sightings, people are seeing shadows, people are seeing familiar spirits, people are seeing, some awful creatures. They're seeing all kinds of things in their house, out on streets, in the woods. People are seeing things.
Not just seeing.
And
Oh,
not
I'm
just,
seeing.
I think you're just seeing things.
Yeah.
No, they're actually seeing. They're actually capturing them on video.
Oh, that's
And then combine that with the sightings of. Again, we're not talking about Santa Claus.
Hey, what's going on? Hope you like the title. Hope life is good. Damn, are they still there? 233-111-67. Forest. Negative 1402. 430. Negative 1402.
No one has at width, and then think you're just seeing things. No, they're actually capturing them on video. And then combine that with the sightings of, again,
Fucking
we're
idiot.
not talking about
Nigger.
Santa Claus.
I'm gonna cut those cunts' throats for
No
fucking
one has
putting those
a
characters in
Santa
there.
Claus conference where people get together by the thousands and have speakers who have written books on Santa Claus sightings all over the earth and how NASA knows about Santa Claus. Here's all the airways and we're not talking about that. We're talking about real people who have real experiences, and it's like you heard that cop while ago. He said, if you see it again, don't call me.
Joking around.
And he said it laughing. He didn't want anything to do with this. Something in him was freaking him out. And he said, I don't want to know. And there are people who have had encounters that say it was the worst thing that ever happened to them in their life. They cannot get it out of their mind. It's there every day. It chases them. It follows them. It's absolutely, it's just absolutely, they don't want anything to do with it. And so I just asked the question. I did this at Pastor Reg's church, and I mentioned while I was talking there, hey, you ought to have me come do a thing on UFOs, and I know some of the people would like that, but Pastor Reg is my friend, and he has great respect for me. I have great respect for him. I would never, ever ask anybody to pressure their pastor into having me come and talk about this. I would never do that, and I especially wouldn't do it to him. And so I kind of brought it up as a half joke. I would love to do that, but if he says no, the Holy Ghost has a reason for it, and I don't know what it is. So I don't know what churches to do this in, and what churches not to do it. I don't know that. So sometimes I just got to rely upon, hey, Pastor, it's your church. You know what'll go over and you know what'll fly. And in the early years of me doing this, I didn't do that. And I probably cost my reputation. No doubt about it. But ask the question, does God have chariots, and what are they made of? And when you answer that question,
They wrote what they knew best. They wrote what they saw. I know that I know.
You do. When you answer this one question, does God have chariots in the heavens? And if he does, what are they made of? And when you, with Scripture, answer that question, that's your entrance. That's the doorway that gets you into understanding what all of this is about. The chariots of God are 20,000, even thousands of angels. I've even asked the question, God, why did you say it that way? Why didn't you just say the chariots of God are thousands of thousands of thousands of angels? Or the chariots of God are without number, being angels. Why did he say 20,000? My opinion is that it's based upon the number 2. And anything based upon the number 2, I think has to do with the age of the Gentiles and the fullness of the Gentiles. 2 days, 2,000 years, the 2,000 cubits that the Jews had to walk behind the Ark of the Covenant, which I think represents 2,000 years that they've got to follow Christ into the Promised Land. Philip, Jesus asking Philip when it comes time to feeding the 5,000, Philip, how can we feed all these people? Philip said, Lord, 200 pennyworth is insufficient. Why did he say 200 pennyworth, and why does the NIV change that to a month's wages or 6 months' wages, whatever, some kind of nonsense like that? Why did he say 200 pennyworth? Because I think that it has to do with the idea that these 5,000 here are of the 12 tribes of Israel, represented by the 12 baskets full left over that are gathered up. I like that. They gathered the fragments that none be. The word was lost that he used. Saved, lost. So anyway, I think that 200 pennyworth is that time. Lord, 2,000 years is not sufficient time to fill these people. Okay, if you understand what I'm saying. But maybe 201 pennyworth is. I'm making that up, but maybe after that you'll have enough to feed. And so Jesus goes in and gathers up the fragments, 12 baskets full, and so on. And there's just other things that when Joseph, Jacob's son, when he marries, it's a picture of Christ, because he's going to save his brethren. He saves his brethren exactly 22 years after they tried to have him killed, because he was 17, and the Bible says that he was 30 when I love this, when he was brought out of prison and put in charge of the 7 years of plenty. 7 years of plenty. Now he's 37. It's 2 years into the famine. Now he's 39, because he's made after the law, the 39 books of the Old Testament. And then, but that makes it exactly 22 years after he was 17 years old when he had his dream about his brethren bowing down to him. So that's what I think that 20,000 represents. It's talking about the times of the Gentiles. And when that time is up, you're going to see a bunch of chariots. Let's look at, well, we don't have to do that. We already have it typed in. Let's go look at a story. Exodus, chapter 14. This is Pharaoh. Okay?
Oh, here we go.
Pharaoh.
No.
What he's named after. And it was told the king of Egypt that the people fled, and the heart of Pharaoh and his servants was turned against the people. And they said, what have we done? Are we crazy? Why have we done this, that we have let Israel go from serving us? And he made him ready his chariot, and took his people with him, and he took 600. Now that number is unmistakable. It's the first part of the code of the beast, 600, 3 score, and 6. 600 chosen chariots, and all the chariots of Egypt. And these chariots now, so picture in this story, these chariots being representatives of the angels that are going to be kicked out of heaven down to the earth. And they are going to bring this world literally into a new world order. If our government, and we already have whistleblowers who are saying it's the cat's out of the bag now. That's what I just showed you. for you to even say these things don't even exist, Mike. I would just very kindly say to you, I'm sorry that you are so far away from being right.
He's wrong.
I'm sorry. Because they are real. And you have now, why is it all of a sudden now we're getting all these stories about, number one, the government protecting whistleblowers. The government saying now anybody in the military or works for us in any capacity, if they see a UFO, we want them to report it to us. For years, you could not report a UFO if you were in the military. You would lose stripes. If, at best, you would lose stripes. But now they're rewarding them. And now we have Daniel Sheehan. He's ready to produce. He's got to make sure he can protect these guys, but he's ready to produce these men who will stand and testify and say, we have worked on ships that we know for a fact did not originate from this planet. We know it because the elements that they're made of and the isotopes, which means you can have an element like oxygen. Oxygen is supposed to have 8 electrons and 8 neutrons and 8 protons. Well, you can have an isotope of oxygen and say you have 12 electrons in the field instead of 8 like it's supposed to have. It's still oxygen, but it's a different isotope. And they say that there's no way that this isotope can even be manufactured on this planet. There's no way. So they know we have things that are from other places in the universe. We have no idea where they came from, but they did not come from here. We absolutely know that for a fact. And
okay, so
the bodies, and we've seen the living ones.
I need.
And that's Psalm 82. I mean, it's right there in the Bible. Every question that can be asked about this subject is in your King James Bible. And I'll stand on that until the day I die. And while I would, I'd say, I'm not ashamed of it either. Part of me says, Mike, don't make a nuisance of yourself at parties. But right now, this is my party. And I will UFO if I want to. All right? Good to be with you today. Thank you so much for all of your prayers. Wrong music.
Assassin's Creed Monteriggioni Villa lore. You fucking idiots. Assassin's Creed 2 Monteriggioni Villa lore. You guys are stupid. Assassin's Creed 2 Villa lore. I said lore, you fucking retards. I swear there is tunnels under there. Are there any tunnels under the Monteriggioni Villa? Oh, you motherfucker. Katami, bitch. I'm gonna have to stick with the log cabin in here. Fucking bitch. Oh, you motherfucking bitch. Most feared girl in Mexico. Mr. Ballin Most feared girl in Mexico.
This story is a very graphic ending, so viewer discretion is advised. But before we get into today's story, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious in a full story format, you come to the right place because that's all we do.
Oh, we didn't.
So if that's of interest to you, please put a single metal fork in the microwave, set it for 99 minutes, and start assembly. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. Before we get into today's story, I want to talk to you about today's sponsor, BetterHelp. Back in 2015, basically self-destruct. Back in 2015, when I was still in the military and was not on YouTube yet, I fell into a very deep depression. I had all the time, I was isolating myself, I was basically self-destructive. And eventually, after my family encouraged me to do so, I did go out for help. I sought out a therapist, and honestly, looking back, I think that decision saved me. So, with BetterHelp, situated below these caves at the foot of the mountains are several small villages that are very isolated, and they're populated primarily with illiterate poor farmers. One night back in May of 1963, a 14-year-old boy named Sebastian Guerrero, who lived in one of these small isolated villages, decided to go for a walk up in the mountains, and he wanted to go explore the ancient caves. Now, this was something he did fairly regularly because there was a local rumor that there was actually hidden treasure in these different caves. Now, it's unclear if Sebastian literally believed that, or if that was just kind of an excuse to go have a look around himself. But regardless, he headed out of his house and he began walking up the mountain towards these caves. The entrance to these caves were a couple hundred feet up the mountainside, and then each of the various entrances, which ranged in size from fairly small to enormous, were spread out a couple of miles in each direction. So Sebastian starts walking up the mountain towards the first entrance he can see. It's dark outside, he's got no flashlight, he's just walking up, and as he's walking, he notices off to his right, fairly far away from where he was, there was light coming out of one of the cave entrances. And he had never recalled seeing light coming out of any of these caves. Nobody ever went in these caves, especially not at night. And so his interest was piqued, and he decided he would kind of abandon his original plan to look around near his village, and he would actually walk all the way over to that lit up cave and see what was going on. So he turned right and began kind of walking uphill at an angle in the direction of this lit up cave. And so as he's walking, he's getting farther and farther away from the village where he lives, and he's starting to hear sounds coming out of this lit up cave sounds like a person potentially, either they're laughing or they're screaming. He doesn't really know. He's thinking, maybe someone's having a party inside one of these caves. He has no idea. But after he gets maybe 200 or 300 feet away from this entrance, he realizes it's definitely a person, and they're definitely screaming. And it does not sound like they're screaming out of joy. It sounds like they're screaming because they're scared or they're in pain. And as he's getting closer and closer and closer to this cave, his anxiety is starting to ramp up. He's really starting to be frightened by what he's hearing, and he's starting to realize there's more than one person inside of this cave. In addition to the person that is screaming out, there also sounds to be a large contingent of other people that are either singing in unison or chanting in unison, but some group of people are doing something in unison while some other person is screaming out. And so he's really starting to get nervous about this cave, but he just can't help feeling curious about what was going on. So he just continued walking until he was maybe 10 feet away from the entrance to this cave. He plopped down behind the rock. And so he's not really sure if it's a good idea to look. He doesn't want to be spotted by whoever is in there. But finally, he kind of works up the courage. He takes a deep breath. He slips out from behind the rock, and he goes right to the edge of this big opening, maybe 10-foot across opening. And he peeks his head right around the edge of the opening, and he looks inside. And what he sees causes him to just freeze in terror. Then his survival instincts just kick in, and he turns, and he starts running down the mountain away from this cave. He is miles south through the northeastern section of Mexico. About halfway down this mountain range on the eastern face lies a series of caves that are very halfway down this mountain range on the eastern face lies a series of caves. Back in May of 1963, a 14-year-old boy named Sebastian Guerrero, who lived in one of these small isolated villages, decided to go for a walk up in the mountains, and he wanted to go explore the caves. Now, this was something he did fairly regularly because there was a local rumor that there was actually hidden treasure in these different caves. Now, it's unclear if Sebastian literally believed that, or if that was just kind of an excuse to go have a look around himself. But regardless, he headed out of his house and he began walking up the mountain towards these caves. The entrance to these caves were a couple hundred feet up the mountainside, and then each of the various entrances, which ranged in size from fairly small to enormous, were spread out a couple of miles in each direction. So Sebastian starts walking up the mountain towards the first entrance he can see. It's dark outside, he's got no flashlight, he's just walking up, and as he's walking, he notices off to his right, fairly far away from where he was, there was light coming out of one of the cave entrances.
I swear to God, that's a real photo, though. It looks like it. Okay, I need to find a place to, might try to find a little island. Hold on a second. That would be nice if this was an island.
And he had never recalled seeing light coming out of any of these caves. Nobody ever went in these caves, especially not at night. And so his interest was piqued, and he decided he would kind of abandon his original plan to just kind of look around near his village, and he would actually walk all the way over to that lit up cave and see what was going on. So he turned right and began kind of walking uphill at an angle in the direction of this lit up cave. And so as he's walking, he's getting farther and farther away from the village where he lives, and he's starting to hear sounds coming out of this lit up cave entrance. It sounds like a person potentially, either they're laughing or they're screaming. He doesn't really know. He's thinking, maybe someone's having a party inside one of these caves. He has no idea. But after he gets maybe 2 or 3 300 feet away from this entrance, he realizes it's definitely a person, and they're definitely screaming. And it does not sound like they're screaming out of joy. It sounds like they're screaming because they're scared or they're in pain. And as he's getting closer and closer and closer to this cave, his anxiety is starting to ramp up because he's really starting to be frightened by what he's hearing, and he's starting to realize there's more than one person inside of this cave. In addition to the person that is screaming out, there also sounds to be a large contingent of other people that are either singing in unison or chanting in unison, but some group of people are doing something in unison while some other person is screaming out. And so he's really starting to get nervous about this cave, but he just can't help feeling curious about what was going on. So he just continued walking until he was maybe 10 feet away from the entrance to this cave, and he plopped down behind a rock. And so he's not really sure if it's a good idea to look. He doesn't want to be spotted by
The rock was on the left side. I'm willing to bet.
He kind of works up the courage. He takes a deep breath, and he slips out from behind the rock, and he goes right to the edge of this big opening, maybe 10-foot across opening, and he peeks his head right around the edge of the opening, and he looks inside, and what he sees causes him to just freeze in terror. Then his survival instincts just kick in, and he turns, and he starts running down the mountain away from this cave. He has no idea if he's been spotted or not, but he's sensing that someone could be chasing him, and so he is just running as if his life depended on it. And he would not run back to his village. Instead, he would run nearly 10 miles to the nearest police station. And when he gets there, he busts through the front doors, and he's totally hysterical. He's drenched in sweat, and the police officers are totally caught off guard, and so they're trying to tell him to calm down. And so Sebastian finally would kind of compose himself, but then he just was not able to describe what he had seen inside of this cave. Whatever he had seen, he knew it was bad, but the words were just escaping him. And so the way he described it to police was he basically thought he saw vampires. And as soon as he began describing vampires to the police, they're thinking to themselves, okay, I don't know what's going on with this kid, but this just cannot be serious. And so they consoled him and kind of calmed him down and said, look, kid, you know, I don't know what you're talking about. You know, if there's any news that comes out of something happening in the cave that's bad, you know, I'm sure we'll hear about it and we'll follow up. But for now, we're just going to bring you back to your village. And so at this, Sebastian was really frustrated, and he was kind of pleading with the police, like, no, you got to take me seriously. There's something bad happening in this cave. Someone could be hurt. Someone could be dying. I don't know, but you got to go to this cave. You got to go see what's going on. But the police at this point, they're just not really interested, and so they ultimately do just drive him back to his village. And so he goes back into his home, the police go back to their station, and everyone just kind of goes to bed for the night. The next day, when Sebastian wakes up, he just can't shake what he saw inside of that cave. And so he would, once again, run back to the police station, and when he got there, he began pleading with the police, like, you gotta go see what's inside the cave. I'm telling you, there's something awful in it. And this time, one of the police officers, his name was Luis Martinez, he would say, you know, okay, kid, bring me to this cave, and I'll have a look around. And so Luis and Sebastian, who's very grateful, they left the police station, they hopped in a police car, and they took off. And then, later on in the day, the other police officers, who were not really paying attention to this cave thing, they realized that Luis and the boy had not returned yet, and Luis had not checked in via his radio. And so at some point in the afternoon that day, the other officers began calling out to Luis. They began calling him on his radio, trying to figure out what's going on, but he wasn't responding. And so the police thought that was odd, but they thought, you know what, I'm sure he'll be back soon. There's got to be an explanation for this. But the rest of the day would go by without Luis reaching out to them, and he didn't return with the boy. And so by that evening, the other officers were genuinely concerned that, you know, something bad had happened to their colleague. And so they tried calling Luis a few more times on the radio. It didn't work. And so the officers, they made their way over to Sebastian's village, and they found Sebastian's family, believing that, you know, maybe the boy was back and he could give some insight into where Luis went. But when they talked to Sebastian's family, they would say, hey, you know, he's not back yet either. And so both Sebastian and Luis at this point have not talked to anyone all day, and they are missing. And so the police at this point, they realized this is an emergency. They need to figure out where these two went. And so they were kind of understaffed. And so they contacted the Mexican army. And they explained, we're missing one of our colleagues. We're missing a child from this village. And so the Mexican army would actually send out a military unit to assist them in going and finding these two people. And so the unit, they show up later that night, and the police and the Mexican army, they head out to where this cave was. And when they saw what was inside the cave, it would shock the world. To understand what was found inside of this cave, we need to go back 6 months to December of 1962. That month, two brothers, Santos and Cayetano Hernandez, who made their living basically traveling around Mexico, stealing from people and swindling people, they decided they were going to pull off their biggest heist yet. They were going to rip off an entire town. Their plan was to go into a small, fairly isolated village that was populated primarily with poor and illiterate people, and they would go in there and they would convince the villagers that they, the brothers, were actually prophets of an exiled Incan god, and if these villagers did everything they said, they would make them rich. And so the village the brothers identified as their target was a place called La Yerba Buena, which was located right at the foot of the Sierra Madre Oriental, right below where that cave was that Luis and Sebastian went to investigate. And La Yerba Buena was exactly what the brothers were looking for. It was home to only about 20 families that were all very poor and illiterate, and they were very suggestible. And so right before the new year, the Hernandez brothers strolled into La Yerba Buena, and they put on this very dramatic show explaining how they were the prophets of the Incan god. And these two brothers, they were very charismatic and they were excellent salesmen. And so they really sold the lie. And these villagers, who were very vulnerable and cut off really from the rest of the world, they believed them. They thought this was their big break. They're going to be rich. We just have to do whatever they say. And so almost immediately, the villagers effectively became the Hernandez brothers' slaves. They would give them anything they wanted and do anything they wanted. But after a couple of months of this, some of the villagers started to be frustrated with the Hernandez brothers, the prophets, because it seemed like they were not really working towards making the villagers rich. Instead, it just seemed like they were horribly mistreating the villagers. And it just didn't feel like this was a relationship that was benefiting the villagers. And so when this sentiment began to kind of make its way around the 70-ish people who lived in La Yerba Buena, the brothers picked up on it, and they could have, at that point, just kind of abandoned their gig. At this point, they've robbed the town dry. There's nothing left for them to give to the brothers. But for whatever reason, the brothers decide instead to salvage their operation. And so the brothers, they leave the village and they go to a city that's relatively close by, and they recruit this young woman named Magdalena Solis. She was a prostitute, and they tell her, hey, we have this con we're doing in La Yerba Buena where we're pretending to be prophets of this Incan god, and they're starting not to believe our lie, and so we need you, if you're willing, to come with us and pretend to be an actual Incan goddess. And so when you show up, they'll know that we were serious, that we have a direct line to the Incan gods and goddesses, and they'll believe us again, and they'll fall back in line. And so Magdalena, she likes the idea of participating in this con, and so she agrees to do it in exchange for some money. And so she, along with the Hernandez brothers and Magdalena's brother, his name was Eliezer, and he functioned as her pimp, those four people, they went back to Yerba Buena, and when they got there, the Hernandez brothers snuck Magdalena past all the villagers up to that cave up in the mountains. And they put her in the back of the cave, they kind of hid her behind some rocks, and they dressed her up in an Incan goddess costume. And then once she was in there, the brothers went back down to the village, and they rounded all the villagers up and said, come on, let's go up to the cave, we have a special ceremony for you. And so the villagers made their way up to this cave, and once they were all inside, the Hernandez brothers used some basic magic tricks and created basically a smoke screen. Once they had this smoke screen kind of billowing in the back of the cave, they secretly signaled to Magdalena, who was behind the smoke screen, and she knew that was her cue, and she leapt through the smoke and she presented herself to the villagers for the first time, and she declared herself to be a reincarnated Incan goddess. And if you don't do what I tell you to do, I'm going to kill you. And so the message she was sending to the villagers was so and she leapt through the smoke, and she presented herself to the villagers for the first time, and she declared herself to be a reincarnated Incan goddess. And if you don't do what I tell you to do, I'm going to kill you. And so the message she was sending to the villagers was so intense, they completely believed that this was an Incan goddess, and therefore this was not a ruse. The brothers were not lying to them. This was all very real. There's a real goddess in front of us. And so they immediately fell right back in line. The plan worked exactly as the brothers wanted it to. However, there was an element of their plan they could not possibly have accounted for. And that was what Magdalena did next. Even though Magdalena was fully aware that what she was getting herself into was an act, it was a con, it was not real. Despite that, as soon as she jumped through the smoke and was standing in front of the villagers for the first time and saw the looks on these people's faces as they stared up at her, and she saw their reverence for her, it had this profound impact on her. This is a woman who's never had control in her life, been a prostitute since a young age.